chapter 15, verses 21 through 41 this morning. If you've got your copy of Scripture and you want to turn there and look at it. One this morning, if you know what a bullfighter, what a rodeo clown, what a pickup man have in common.
They're all men.
Do what? It's all dangerous. What?
They're all men.
They're all men. Anything else? They're crazy. Okay, great. We'll take crazy. They are all there for a purpose, all right? They may be crazy and may be dangerous, but they are there to do what? They are there to protect a cowboy, all right? They are there for the purpose of saving somebody when they need saving, all right? Now look, my question this morning, we've been building up to this for the last few weeks as we looked at what happened at the Last Supper, what happened in the garden, what happened at the trial of Jesus. And this morning I asked the question, what happened at the cross? Now see, after Jesus Christ was buried in the tomb, here's the way the plans of men went. And I talked about this I just alluded to this a little bit in our service this morning, our sunrise service, about the best laid plans of mice and men. What? They go off astray. They go wrong. Listen. The plans of men were that they would put Jesus to death, and that would be the end of that. He would be buried in a tomb, and they would be finished with this group of people who had raised up, this group of people who had started following after Jesus and calling Him, the audacity they had to call Him the Messiah, the Christ, because that's the one that was promised in Scripture that would come and save His people out of bondage. How dare them call this Jesus, this Nazarene, the Christ? That'd be like us in College Station calling somebody from Austin the Messiah. I know, right? And that's exactly what they said. In fact, one of His disciples, when he found out Jesus was from Nazareth, he said, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" How dare him have the audacity to call himself the Christ, the Messiah? But that's exactly who He was. And they thought when we put Him in the grave, that'll be the end of it. And 3 days later, He did exactly what He had told them He would do. He rose again. He conquered sin. He conquered death. And the question on everybody's lips were, what happened at the cross? We thought He died. In fact, Pilate, when he was a man by the name of Joseph of Arimathea came to him and asked Pilate for the body of Jesus. And Pilate was amazed. He said, "Is He dead already?" And he asked the centurion and made sure that he had been dead for a while. There was a theory that Jesus had just fainted, that because of the blood loss he wasn't really dead, but that he had fainted. No, Pilate said, how long? Has He been dead for a good while? Yes. He died. He didn't just faint, and they put Him in the grave, and then they came back and they revived Him and they got Him on His feet. No, Jesus Christ died on the cross. Pilate said, "Is He dead? How long has He been dead?" They knew He had no life left in that body. And so the question, what happened at the cross? I'll tell you what happened at the cross. Matthew chapter 15, verses 21 through 41. Then they compelled a certain man, Simon, a Cyrenian, the father of Alexander and Rufus, as he was coming out of the country and passing by, to bear his cross. See, Jesus couldn't even carry His own cross because of the blood loss that He had experienced because of the beating. Listen, Romans were good at what they did. They had men who were professional killers, and they knew exactly what would kill you and how much they could do to you, how much they could torture you before you died. He had lost so much blood, Jesus had, that they had to get someone else to carry His cross. And they brought Him to the place, Golgotha, which is translated place of a skull. And then they gave Him wine mingled with myrrh to drink, but He did not take it. And when they crucified Him, they divided His garments, casting lots for them, to determine what every man should take. Now it was the third hour, And they crucified him. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning, y'all. And the inscription of his accusation was written above, the King of the Jews. With him they also crucified 2 robbers, one on his right and the other on his left. So the scripture was fulfilled, which says, and he was numbered with the transgressors. And those who passed by blasphemed him, wagging their heads and saying, Aha! You who destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross. Likewise, the chief priests also, walking among themselves with the scribes, said, He saved others, himself he cannot save. Let the Christ, the King of Israel, descend now from the cross, that we may see and believe. Even those who were crucified with him reviled him. Now when the 6th hour had come, about noon, there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour. And at the 9th hour Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which is translated, my God, why have you forsaken me? Some of those who stood by, when they heard that, said, Look, he's calling for Elijah. Then someone ran and filled a sponge full of sour wine, put it on a reed, and offered it to him to drink, saying, Let him alone. Let us see if Elijah will come to take him down. And Jesus cried out with a loud voice and breathed his last. Then the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. So when the centurion who stood opposite him saw that he cried out like this and breathed his last, he said, Truly this man was the Son of God. There were also women looking on from afar, among whom were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James the Less, and of Joseph, and Salome, who also followed him and ministered to him when he was in Galilee, and many other women who came up with him to Jerusalem. What happened at the cross? I just read it. Jesus died. It's the end of it, right? Let me tell you what happened at the cross. Let me tell you what the story of the cross tells us. First, it shows us that Jesus showed what love really is. You want to know what happened at the cross? Jesus showed us what love really is. When Jesus was on trial, we talked about this last week. When Jesus was on trial, they brought all these witnesses up to testify against him, and their testimonies didn't match. If Jesus had kept his mouth shut, he would have walked away a free man. He would not have been condemned because none of the testimonies fit each other. But when they asked Jesus, Are you the Christ? He said, I am. Jesus alone cast the deciding testimony about what would happen to him. Jesus is the one who sent himself to the cross. Jesus showed what love really is. John chapter 15, verse 13 says it this way. It says, Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. The very words of Jesus. See, the difference between love and desire is shown at the cross. And we may desire something. We may say we love something, but we really desire it. Okay? All right? There are things in this life that we might love, we might have a desire for, but there's a difference between love and desire. Desire says, this is what I want. Desire gets what I want. Love gives what you need. Okay? And there's the difference. Desire says, this is what I want for myself. When we hear those words, I'm in love. You ever heard that? You ever said that? Wives, how long has it been since your husband said, I'm in love with you? I mean, it'd probably make you throw up. I know it wouldn't start. That might have been nice when you had hair, but right now, it's just like really creepy. Desire says, this is what I want. And we look at desire and we call that love, but that's not love. Love gives us what we need, and that's what Jesus did. He showed us what love is. He gave us what we needed. And what we needed was a Lord, a Savior. Jesus shows us the difference between love and desire. And so I would ask, can we love like Jesus? If desire says, this is what I want for me, and love says, this is what I'm going to give for you, can we love like Jesus? Don't answer that question yet. Because though we may love sacrificially at times, and just as Jesus' words say, greater love has no one than this, than to lay down their life for a friend, we may give sacrificially at times, but look at what Jesus did. He gave up everything to show us what love really is. He left His place in glory. He left the right hand of the Father and to become an infant child who was helpless and who was not able to do anything on his own, came into a family that really had no wealth, the son of a carpenter. Of all the things that you could be in that day and time, carpentry was probably not one of those greater positions. It was a tough life. It was a hard life. Going out into the forest and cutting down trees and experiencing the pain of splinters and nails and smashed thumbnails. All those things that a carpenter experiences. And Jesus was born into that life. He gave up everything. He gave up glory so that He did live a human life. And He did so without sin. And He lived that life perfectly so that we might have a relationship with the Father. Jesus gave up everything, even to that point where He gave up His life for us. See, what the cross also did was, what happened at the cross was the supreme sacrifice was made. If you think you can love like Jesus, think about this. The supreme sacrifice was made for you and for me. Jesus knew the real pain of sin on the cross. Now, think about this with me. Jesus knew the real pain of sin. Now, we might sin and we might think we know what it feels like when we sin, but on the cross, Jesus experienced the weight, the consequences, and the separation from God that sin brings. Isaiah chapter 53, verse 4 says this, "Surely He has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed Him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted." Surely He's borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Jesus knew the weight of sin. He knew the consequences of sin. He knew the separation from God that sin brings. Now, when we sin, we often only deal with the guilt of that sin. Oh, I sinned. And see, here's what happens. Satan uses guilt to take away what we really should feel and experience about sin. In the Garden of Eden, when Adam and Eve were told, you can eat of every other tree in the garden. Every other tree in the garden. Every other tree in the garden. But there's one in the middle that I don't want you to eat from. Every other tree you can eat from, but that one tree don't. If you have children, you know what that means. I'm going straight for the thing that you told me not to touch. And we can blame Adam for that. Alright? Because God said you can have everything else. Just don't touch this. See, we sin, and Satan uses guilt to mask the real effect of sin. They were told that in the day that you eat it, you'll surely die. And Satan says, die, you're not going to die. God's just telling you not to do that because He knows the moment that you eat that, you're going to be just like Him. You'll know everything. Really? And Eve looked at it and said, hey, that looks pretty good for supper. I don't have to cook. And she eats it. And then she gives it to her husband. Now listen to what the Scripture says. It says, who was right there with her. Okay? All along this line, Adam could have said, hey, wait, sweetheart. This is not something we need to do. Let's go on. Let's go on. Let's go on. But he didn't say a word. Okay? Sin came into the world not through Eve, but through that little mealy-mouthed wimp who didn't tell his wife no when he should have told her no. All right? I'm not going to get into whether or not you should listen to what your husband says. That's another sermon for another day. It's through Adam that sin entered the world. And what happens? They eat it, and guess what? Hey, we didn't die. But their eyes were open. And they realized, hey, we don't have any clothes on. And they hid from God. And they knew the separation from God immediately. And Satan right away started using guilt to mask the real consequences of what sin carried. Satan uses guilt to mask that. See, when Jesus went to the cross, He carried the sin without guilt. Jesus did not do anything wrong. He went to the cross guiltless, perfect, holy, and He experienced the pain of sin, the pain of separation from God, the weight of that sin, the consequences of it. He carried that sin without the guilt, so the effect of it is all that He felt. I don't know what that feels like, y'all. And I kind of think that if we knew the extreme consequences and we felt that without the guilt, I don't know that we'd be able to bear that. Jesus felt that. And you know what He felt? He felt the sin of every man, woman, and child from Adam all the way through today. Now I want you to just think a minute about the last sin that you committed. And there are about 114 of us here this morning. And so, imagine that. Just one sin that Jesus felt from each one of us on the cross. Now, wait a minute. Because if you're anything like me, you probably sinned more than once. All right? At least twice. All right? And that's all Darla knows about. All right? Listen. Every sin, every act of disobedience, every wrong thing we've done, Jesus felt the weight of that on the cross. Now, you might think that the pain of the nails in His hands and the pain of the nail in His feet and the crown of thorns on His head were excruciatingly painful. But I wonder if the pain from that was paling in comparison to the weight of the sin of the world on His shoulders. And that's what Jesus did on the cross. He paid the supreme sacrifice for you and for me and for all of mankind. So what happened at the cross? There's one more thing I want to point out. And that's this. That forgiveness of and freedom from sin was provided for us. Luke chapter 23 and verse 34 says this. Then Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. On the cross, as He's being nailed to the cross, His prayer to the Father was this: Father, forgive them. They don't know. Hebrews chapter 9, verses 22 through 28. Listen to these words. According to the law, almost all things are purified with blood, and without shedding of blood there is no remission. Therefore it was necessary that the copies of the things in the heavens should be purified with these, but the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these. For Christ has not entered the holy places made with hands, which are copies of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. Not that He should offer Himself often, as the high priest enters the most holy place every year with blood of another. He then would have had to suffer often, since the foundation of the world. But now, once at the end of the ages, He has appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of Himself. And as it is appointed for men to die once, but after this the judgment, so Christ was offered once to bear the sins of many. For those who eagerly wait for Him, He will appear a second time, apart from sin, for salvation. Jesus Christ died on the cross. But He didn't die on the cross to forgive this sin in this moment, and then this sin, and then that sin, and then the next sin. He didn't die so that we could say, oh God, I messed up, forgive this sin. And then go back into that same pattern and say, oh God, I messed up, forgive this sin. And go out back into that same pattern and say, oh God, I messed up, forgive this sin. That's not what He did. Jesus died. He shed His blood that we might be free from sin. That word, remission. Without the shedding of blood, there's no remission. Y'all, that's a Greek word for freedom. Jesus died on the cross so we might be free. Not that we would be slaves to sin. Not that we would be bound to sin. He died that we might truly know what freedom is. That we might be free from the chains, from the bondage of sin. The cross, y'all, was God's divine rescue mission. It was the way that He provided for us to be pulled out of sin. It was the way that God provided that we might be free from the bondage, from the guilt of sin. And Jesus Christ died on the cross for us that we might have that freedom. I must confess to you that I did not get done this week what I had hoped to do because I wanted to have a large cross sitting here in front of you so you could focus on it. Because I don't want you looking at me. I want you to focus on the cross. I want you to focus and look intently at your rescuer, Jesus Christ, who died on the cross. And I want you to tell Him today what you will do with His sacrifice. Look at Jesus and tell Him what you're going to do with that sacrifice, knowing that He took your sin to the cross. You only have two choices. Only two. Will you totally surrender to your rescuer? Or will you live in confined comfort with your captor? Maybe you've heard and seen stories of those who were taken prisoner during Vietnam. And there are those who many years later have rescue missions to go after them, and they cower back from their rescuer because they've become so comfortable in their confinement, and they've identified so much with their captors that they can't imagine going back with those who have come to rescue them. Similar story with the mother of Quanah Parker. You've heard that story. Cynthia Ann Parker was taken by Indians, by the Native Americans, and she was assimilated into their customs. And when she was rescued, it was so difficult for her to come out of that because she had identified with her captors. They call that Stockholm Syndrome. Y'all, I'm afraid we've got spiritual Stockholm Syndrome. We have become identified with our captor, with Satan, who wants to blind us to the freedom that Jesus Christ wants to give us. And we continue to wallow around in the mud of sin instead of being freed from that because of the sacrifice that Jesus Christ has made. What's your choice as you look at your rescuer today? You going to tell him today that I surrender to you? Or are you going to tell him to go fly a kite? I'm going to stay here with the captain. I'm going to stay here with the liar. I'm going to stay here with Satan. I'm going to stay here in what I'm comfortable in. What happened at the cross? You decide. Jesus Christ died for you because He loves you. God gave that perfect sacrifice, that sinless individual, to die and pay the penalty in your place. What did we do with that? What's your choice today? What happened at the cross? Today you choose.